What if everything you were taught about freedom was only an illusion? What if the decisions you believe are yours were, in reality, shaped by forces you cannot see, forces that have been manipulating humanity since the beginning of time? For centuries, people have trusted in religions, governments, and systems of power to guide their lives, never suspecting that something deeper, darker, and older might be pulling the strings. But what if our world is not ruled by God, but by impostors who trapped the human spirit in a prison of matter? Gnostic thinkers believed that humanity was not born into true freedom, but into captivity. They claimed there was a day, a turning point in ancient history, when humankind was deceived and enslaved by spiritual entities known as the Archons. These beings, according to Gnostic tradition, constructed an invisible prison around human souls, shaping our perception of reality itself. The German philosopher Hans Jonas, one of the great interpreters of Gnostic texts, brought these shocking ideas to light in the modern world, showing that the Gnostics were not simply dreamers, but guardians of a forbidden revelation. If this is true, then the life you know, the rules you follow, and even the truths you believe may have been distorted to keep you from discovering who you really are. Imagine that the struggles of humanity, the endless cycles of suffering, the wars, and the oppression were not accidents of history, but carefully orchestrated distractions to keep the divine spark within us asleep. Could it be that everything you thought was meant to guide you toward God was actually meant to keep you away from Him? In this video, we will explore the terrifying moment when humanity became the prisoner of the Archons. We will uncover what Hans Jonas revealed about this ancient vision, why it was buried, and how it still affects every aspect of our lives today. Prepare yourself to question reality itself, for the truth behind this forgotten secret may change the way you see the world forever. And if you feel the weight of this mystery pressing against your heart, if you want to keep walking with us through the shadows of forgotten knowledge, make sure to subscribe now and join this journey. Together, we will uncover the hidden revelations that were never meant to be known. To understand how humanity became a prisoner of the Archons, we must first see how the truth was hidden. The Gnostic writings, many of them discovered in the Nag Hammadi library in Egypt in 1945, describe a reality that was radically different from what the official church later taught. These texts spoke of invisible rulers who shaped the material world and kept humanity in ignorance. Yet for centuries, these voices were silenced, their manuscripts buried or destroyed, and their vision of reality branded as heresy. Why? Because if people believed that the powers ruling this world were not divine, the entire structure of authority, religious and political, would collapse. Hans Jonas emphasized that the Gnostics described human existence as exile. They saw this world not as a paradise created for us, but as a cosmic trap. The moment of captivity began when the Archons, servants of a false creator, wove illusions around our souls. They manipulated nature, society, and even religion itself, so that we would mistake their prison for reality. According to this vision, everything humanity considers stable laws, institutions, even sacred traditions, was carefully designed to keep us from discovering the divine spark within. Can you imagine how dangerous such an idea was to those in power? The Church Fathers fought fiercely against the Gnostics because these teachings challenged the very foundation of their authority. To say that the world's rulers were not guided by God but by impostors was to shatter the sacred link between heaven and earth. If the Archons were real, then obedience to the system would mean slavery, not salvation. And so, across centuries, the Gnostic truth was erased from memory, replaced by a narrative that demanded loyalty, conformity, and faith without question. Think about this. How many times have you been told to accept life as it is, to never question why suffering exists, to see tragedy as part of God's plan? What if these teachings were not divine comfort, but the very chains that keep humanity passive? Jonas believed that the Gnostic texts reveal an ancient cry of rebellion, a voice that refused to accept the world as good when it was filled with pain and injustice. It was this cry that authorities tried to silence, so that humanity would never awaken from its prison. The problem is clear. The truth about the Archons and their power over this world was buried, and in its place a new truth was imposed, one that made humans forget their captivity. The question we must now ask is, who exactly are these Archons, and how did they succeed in enslaving humanity? That is what we will uncover next. The word Archon comes from the Greek, meaning ruler or authority. But in the Gnostic vision, the Archons are not human leaders. They are cosmic forces, spiritual beings born from ignorance, serving the false creator, the Demiurge. The Demiurge, according to the Gnostics, was not the true god of light, but a counterfeit divinity who fashioned the material universe as a prison. The Archons are his servants, enforcing the laws of this false world, ensuring that humanity remains blind to its true origin. Jonas explained that the Archons were imagined as both personal and impersonal powers. Sometimes they appear as demonic figures ruling over the planets, each controlling a sphere of destiny that binds the human soul. Other times, they represent the oppressive systems of life, unjust governments, rigid laws, and the endless demands of society. In either form, their mission is the same: to keep humanity chained to ignorance and fear. If you have ever felt that life itself was designed to crush your spirit, that invisible barriers prevent you from reaching true freedom, then you have touched the shadow of the Archons. The Gnostics taught that the Archons created deception at every level. They influenced human thought, spreading lies through authority figures and shaping beliefs to make people accept their bondage. They even masked themselves with divine symbols, making humanity bow before powers that were not divine at all. This is why the Gnostics described the world as an elaborate illusion, a counterfeit creation where even religion could become a trap if it served the wrong master. Imagine standing in a vast labyrinth. Every path looks real, every door promises escape, yet each one leads back into captivity. This was how the Gnostics saw human existence under the Archons. The body, with its needs and passions, is part of the prison. The world, with its cycles of suffering, is part of the prison. And even the heavens, governed by planetary rulers, form the walls of the prison. The Archons are the jailers, and humanity is their prisoner. But this vision was not meant to leave us in despair. On the contrary, it was meant to awaken us. The Gnostics insisted that within each human being lies a divine spark, a fragment of the true God, a light that the Archons cannot extinguish. They may rule the external world, but they cannot erase the inner truth. The great question then is, how did the Archons manage to imprison humanity if that divine spark was always within us? The answer lies in the story of how they distorted the very beginning of human history. The Gnostics told a story radically different from the one later adopted by the Church. According to them, the true God is beyond this world pure light, unknowable and infinite. From him emanated divine beings called eons, who carried aspects of his fullness. But one eon, named Sophia, acted outside the harmony of the whole, and from her mistake, the Demiurge was born. He was blind, arrogant, and believed himself to be the only God. In his ignorance, he created the material universe, shaping it as a copy of the divine, but without true light. To maintain his rule, he formed the Archons to guard his creation and keep humanity bound to it. Jonas explained that in this myth, the fall of humanity was not a moral error, but a cosmic act of deception. The Demiurge and his Archons crafted the human body as a cage for the divine spark. They whispered false truths, making humans believe they were creations of a benevolent God, when in fact they were captives of a counterfeit. This was the great distortion. Humanity was made to worship its jailer. By convincing people that the material world was sacred and unchangeable, the Archons ensured that no one would seek the hidden God beyond. Think of how this story turns everything upside down. Instead of the world being a perfect creation, it becomes a prison. Instead of rulers being divinely chosen, they become instruments of oppression. Instead of religion always leading to God, it can serve as a mask for the Archons' power. To the Gnostics, The true act of faith was not blind obedience, but awakening, seeing through the illusion. But how did this awakening happen? What weapon could humans use against forces that shaped reality itself? The Gnostics had one answer: Gnosis, the secret knowledge that revealed who we really are. For the Gnostics, the only way to escape the prison of the Archons was through Gnosis. This word means knowledge, but not ordinary knowledge, rather, a deep inner awakening, a direct recognition of the divine spark within. Hans Jonas emphasized that Gnosis was not about learning doctrines or repeating rituals. It was about piercing through the veil of illusion to remember where we truly come from. When someone experienced Gnosis, they no longer saw the Archons as gods or authorities. They recognized them as impostors, powerless before the inner light of the true God. This was why Gnosis was so dangerous to established powers. A person who awakens no longer obeys blindly, no longer fears death, and no longer believes that suffering is their fate. Gnosis was liberation at the most radical level. It revealed that the soul's true home was not this world of matter, but the realm of light beyond it. Once the soul remembered this, it could no longer be fully controlled. Even if the Archons tried to intimidate, deceive, or punish, the awakened one would see through their tricks. Think of it this way. Imagine waking up from a dream in which you were a slave. While you were dreaming, every command felt real, every chain felt unbreakable. But the moment you awaken, you realize none of it has true power over you. That was how Gnosis worked. It broke the illusion. The Gnostics believed that Christ himself came to deliver this secret knowledge, not to build institutions, but to remind humanity of its divine origin. And yet, this message was buried, replaced with teachings that demanded obedience instead of awakening. The Archons' influence reached even into religion, ensuring that the key to freedom was hidden in plain sight. The question is, how exactly did they succeed in keeping humanity asleep for so long? The Gnostics believed that the Archons did not only rule through brute force, but through deception. Their greatest weapon was ignorance. They surrounded humanity with distractions, pleasures, fears, and endless struggles, so that people would never turn inward to discover their divine spark. Hans Jonas pointed out that in Gnostic thought, the Archons used both external power and internal temptation. They worked through rulers, laws, and social systems, but also through desires, doubts, and passions that chained the soul to the material world. In this way, the prison was not only outside us, but also within us. Religion itself, according to the Gnostics, became one of the Archons' most effective tools. By twisting the image of the divine, they convinced humanity to worship the demiurge as the highest god. Entire systems of faith were built on fear, obedience, and guilt rather than awakening. People were told that salvation came only through submission, never through inner discovery. In this way, the Archons hid the truth in plain sight. Humanity carried the seed of divinity all along, but was made to believe it was powerless, sinful, and unworthy. Think about it in your own life. How many times have you been told that you are too weak, too small, or too dependent to change your destiny? How often has fear of punishment, of failure, of divine anger kept you from asking deeper questions? The Gnostics would say that each of these voices is the echo of the Archons, whispering illusions into the human heart. By controlling thought, shaping belief, and feeding fear, the Archons managed to keep humanity asleep for millennia. But there were always a few who resisted, who glimpsed beyond the prison walls. Their revelations threatened the powers of this world, and it is their legacy we must rediscover. The Gnostics taught that the prison of the Archons could be broken, but only through a revelation so radical that it overturned everything people thought they knew. This revelation was that the God of this world was not the true God. The creator of matter, the one demanding obedience and sacrifice, was the demiurge of the false ruler. The true God existed beyond this universe, in a realm of pure light, unreachable by the Archons. For Hans Jonas, this was the most shocking aspect of Gnostic thought. It dared to question the very foundation of religion and society. This idea was not just philosophy, it was rebellion. If the Archons were impostors, then every system that claimed to represent divine will could be unmasked as a tool of control. Imagine the courage it took in ancient times to say this openly, when such beliefs could cost you your life. And yet, Gnostics believed that Christ himself was sent not to confirm the authority of the demiurge, but to expose it. In their writings, Jesus is not only a savior, but a revealer, bringing hidden knowledge that frees the soul from the cosmic jailers. This turning point was dangerous because it placed the responsibility of awakening on each individual. No priest, no temple, no institution could save you if you remained blind. But if you awakened, nothing, not even the Archons, could stop you. This was why the revelation had to be buried, for a society built on obedience cannot allow its members to discover their own divine freedom. At this moment, we must pause and reflect. If such a revelation truly shakes the foundation of reality, what does it mean for us today? Are we still prisoners of the Archons, or are we ready to reclaim the forgotten spark within? It would be easy to dismiss the Archons as ancient myths, but Hans Jonas showed that the Gnostic vision still speaks directly to modern life. The Archons may not appear as winged rulers of planets anymore, yet their influence is felt in the invisible systems that govern our world. Think about the structures that dominate your daily life: political powers, economic systems, endless cycles of work and consumption. Do they free you, or do they keep you dependent and distracted? To the Gnostics, these are the fingerprints of the Archons in our time. Even our inner world can reflect their prison. Anxiety, comparison, and the constant pressure to be more, earn more, and prove more, all of these are chains that keep the soul restless. Instead of turning inward to discover the spark of divinity, we are led outward into distractions that never satisfy. The more we chase, the deeper the prison feels. This is exactly what the Gnostics warned about. The Archons thrive when humanity forgets its true origin. Religion, too, can still carry echoes of this deception. Whenever a belief system demands blind obedience, suppresses questions, or instills fear instead of awakening, the Gnostic warning becomes relevant again. The point is not to abandon faith, but to ask whether our faith connects us to the living God of light or keeps us chained to the rulers of this world. The prison of the Archons, then, is not just a cosmic story, it is a lived reality. Each time we feel powerless before systems too big to fight, each time fear silences our search for truth, each time we trade inner freedom for external security, we replay the captivity described in Gnostic texts. The question is, will we continue to live as prisoners, or will we dare to awaken? The Gnostics believed that awakening begins when we dare to question what we have always accepted. Hans Jonas emphasized that this questioning was not rebellion for its own sake, but a sacred act of remembering. To ask, who truly rules this world? Or, what is the source of my suffering? Is to begin breaking the spell of the Archons. In that moment of doubt, the divine spark within us stirs, whispering that we were not made for slavery, but for freedom. This awakening is not easy. The Archons resist it with fear, distractions, and confusion. But the Gnostic writings insist that even the smallest glimpse of truth is enough to weaken their hold. When you realize that your worth does not come from systems of power, when you feel that your soul belongs to a higher realm, the chains begin to crack. The Archons lose their power the moment you stop believing in their illusions. For many Gnostics, Christ was the great awakener. His mission was not only to forgive sins, but to reveal the hidden truth that humanity carries a divine seed the Archons cannot destroy. Salvation, in this view, was not submission to the rulers of this world, but liberation from them. Jonas explained that this vision gave the early Gnostics a sense of defiance and hope even in times of persecution. Today, the same choice is before us. Will we continue to live asleep, letting external powers dictate our reality? Or will we awaken to the light that has always been within? The Gnostics left us a dangerous but beautiful invitation to see the world as it truly is and to walk in freedom. And that brings us to the final and most important question of all. What will you do with this revelation? We began with a shocking question. What if humanity has lived for centuries inside a prison built by invisible rulers? Following the voices of the Gnostics and the insights of Jonas, we uncovered the story of the Archons, the jailers of this world, who shaped reality itself to keep us blind. We saw how they distorted creation, hid the divine spark, and used fear and obedience to control humanity. Yet we also discovered the forgotten key, Gnosis, the inner awakening that reveals the prison for what it is and reminds us of the God of light beyond this world. The greatest revelation is that the Archon's power depends only on our ignorance. The moment we remember who we are, their chains fall away. The divine spark within you is not small or fragile. It is stronger than any illusion. The Gnostics taught that even in the darkest prison, the soul can awaken and rise. And perhaps that is why their message was buried, because it gave ordinary people extraordinary freedom, the kind that no authority could control. So now the choice is yours. Will you walk as a prisoner of the Archons, believing in the illusions of this world? Or will you join the seekers who dare to question, who dare to awaken, who dare to remember? By searching for truth, you keep alive the memory of those forbidden teachings. By sharing, commenting, and subscribing, you become part of a community that refuses to let the light be hidden again. Tell me in the comments, do you believe humanity is still trapped by unseen powers? Or do you think we are ready to awaken? Your voice matters, because every shared reflection helps break the silence the Archons tried to impose. The search for knowledge does not end here. It is only beginning.